Good morning. My name is Bill Gessell, and I'm an advisor with the Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, and I'm pleased to bring you today a Toolbox Tuesday. Every Tuesday now, for the foreseeable future, we're going to be providing Toolbox Talks every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. A great opportunity to share some information with your staff or to augment your current meetings. Today I thought I'd try to bring a timely topic, something that we've all been dealing with a lot in the past few weeks with working outside or inside in this extreme heat. So I'm going to quickly go to a screen share and we're going to discuss a few points and have a little bit of a discussion. So today I wanted to talk about the importance of hydration, a little bit of a discussion about the prevention of heat-related illness. Almost everyone at every time has experienced a heat-related illness. So whether you're at home and you're working around the yard, or whether it's at work and you're outside performing a task, or inside of a building or facility performing that task, you may have been subject to or have potentially taken on a mild heat-related illness. In North America, according to the statistics, 220 people die every year from occupational heat stress. All of these injuries can be prevented by taking some appropriate steps prior to the work beginning and while the work is being conducted. Something that you may have encountered yourself would be heat exhaustion. And this can present through a variety of different symptoms. So nausea, headaches, extreme thirst, an increase or a high body temperature, and then dizziness. The one problem with heat exhaustion is if these signs and symptoms aren't looked at and appropriate steps are taken, this can lead to heat stroke. And now heat stroke is a much more serious event that can lead to unconsciousness, organ failure, or death if action is not taken immediately. So what can we do to prevent this? There's a lot of different ways that organizations can help their workers prevent heat and heat-related illnesses. Now, some of these are lined out in some of the regulations, which we'll review in a minute, but just some good rules of thumb is to schedule work to begin early and end before the peak of temperature. Many times while I was still working out in the field, we would, in the summertime, adjust our work hours so that we would start far earlier in the morning and be done before the peak of noon. With the full workday completed at that point, so as that we don't expose ourselves to the high afternoon temperatures and are able to still get a full day's work in. Another thing that's a good strategy is to look at working around, if you're working near a structure or outside of a structure, to try to plan the work so that you take advantage of the shady side throughout the day. As the sun moves, of course, the shade moves around the building. So scheduling your work to start in the shade and follow the shade around the building will again help prevent any heat-related illnesses. One problem that you may encounter is if you're working in an enclosed space. There were a number of times where we were working in buildings under construction and there was no opportunity at that point in time. There was no air conditioning or heating and cooling systems hooked up. So we had to look at some mechanical air movement, some large air movers, fans placed at the doorways to help circulate some air through the building. Even the flow of slightly warmer air helps cool your body down as you versus standing in some stale, stagnant, heated building. There's a bunch of commercially available items out there as well too. There are mist generators, a number of different things like that to provide cooling to the body by the use of water spray or otherwise. You could also purchase or fabricate physical sunshades. So if you're working outside, a lot of times we'll see, especially if you have some work that means that you're going to have to be in one position for a long time, the use and placement of canopies, of tarps, of the tents, or large umbrellas to help provide some physical sunshade. Also, taking more regular breaks. It was very important that you didn't sustain prolonged work in the direct sunlight. If you could, to be able to stop at more regular intervals and stop for a water break, to get into the shade if you had to be working out in the direct sunlight, and to try to sequence your day around that. And then as well, the selection of some potentially breathable PPE. Nothing is worse than working out in some extreme heat with gloves on or a full high-vis vest that isn't perforated or breathable. You can find pieces of PPE that still provide the same level of protection that you would get from the standard issue stuff, but are more suitable for working in hot environments and hot conditions. Another thing we want to look at closely is proper hydration. To begin with, there's a couple of responsibilities outlined in the Saskatchewan Employment Act and the Occupational Health and Safety Act and regulations. The first one is thermal conditions, and this is Regulation 70. I didn't summarize it because I did want to read from it and kind of review a little bit of the information found within it. So, thermal conditions, number 70, subject to subsection 3, in an indoor place of employment, an employer, contractor, or owner shall provide and maintain thermal conditions, including air temperature, radiant temperature, humidity, and air movement that are appropriate to the nature of the work being performed, provide effective protection for the health and safety of workers, and provide a reasonable thermal comfort for the workers. Subsection 2, at an indoor place of employment where the thermal environment is likely to be a health or safety concern to the workers, an employer or contractor shall provide and maintain appropriate and suitable located instrument for the measuring of thermal conditions. Where it is not reasonably practicable to control the thermal conditions or where the work is being performed outdoors, an employer, contractor, or owner shall provide and maintain measures for the effective protection of the health and safety of workers and the reasonable thermal comfort of workers. Measures for the purpose set out in the previous subsection may include, but are not limited to, the following, as we mentioned before. Frequent monitoring of thermal conditions. Again, if the temperature becomes too high in a certain area, being able to move that work area or move the workers from that area. And then followed by the provision of special or temporary equipment, including screens, shelters, and temporary heating or cooling equipment. This would be your thermal fans, your tarps, your shelters, umbrellas in certain situations. Also, the provision of suitable clothing or personal protective equipment. And then the provision of hot or cold drapes. And this is something that we'll take up in the Regulation 76. As well, the use of acclimatization or other procedures. The use of limited work schedules with rest and recovery periods, changes in the workload, or changes in the hours or arrangements for work. Also, including frequent observation of workers by a person who is trained to recognize the symptoms of stress resulting from extreme temperatures. This also can include the provision of emergency supplies for use when traveling under extremely cold or inclement weather conditions. And then the last piece is where a worker is required to work in thermal conditions that are different than those associated with the worker's normal duties. An employer or contractor shall provide and require the worker to use any suitable clothing or other personal protective equipment that is necessary to protect the health and safety of the worker. So that's the thermal conditions section of the regulations. The next one I wanted to touch on is drinking water. Now, again, I'm going to read through this one because there is some very important information in here that's that employers, contractors, and owners need to know to help protect their workers. So Section 76, drinking water. An employer, contractor, or owner shall provide at suitable points that are readily accessible to all workers an adequate supply of clean and safe drinking water. Where the supply of drinking water at a place of employment is not piped in, an employer or contractor shall provide drinking water in suitable covered containers and protect the drinking water from contamination and change the drinking water as often as necessary to ensure that the water is clean and safe to drink. Subsection 3, where water is supplied by an upward jet, an employer or contractor shall provide an adequate supply of disposable cups near each supply of drinking water. And then where it is necessary to identify the supply of drinking water, an employer, contractor, or owner shall clearly indicate the supply of drinking water with a sign that says drinking water, or by other visual means. Where there's a supply of water at a place of employment that is unfit for drinking, an employer or contractor shall clearly indicate the supply of water with a permanently fixed, durable sign that says unfit for drinking, or by other visual means. So here we can see that it is important that employers, contractors, and owners make the provisions to provide safe, clean water for their employees while at work. Now, once that water supply is secured, often this comes down to the workers and how much water does a worker need. More often than not, including myself, workers underestimate the amount of necessary hydration to ward off heat exhaustion. Sources such as the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety and other sources say that the average person needs a minimum of 80 ounces of water a day. And then when working in hot conditions or under stress or physical conditions, that can increase to over 200 ounces of water. Now, these numbers are great and they would provide you some guidance, but what does that actually look like when it comes down to site? So your 80 ounces on an average day equals approximately 2.3 liters. That is one of those extra large water bottles, the ones that look like a mini cooler bottle, or 10 common paper cups, or 20 of the small cone-shaped water dispenser cups. Now, remembering though that this 80 ounces is an amount that is used throughout the day and not just consumed in one dose. Now, what does 200 ounces look like? 2.5 of those extra large water bottles, 25 common paper cups, or 50 water dispenser cone-shaped cups. And again, this amount is throughout the day. While I was still working out in the field on hot days, I would think on an average I would consume maybe 10 to 15 of those small little cone-shaped cups in a day, leaving myself open for potentially heat-related illnesses. Again, this is throughout a working day, throughout an 8-hour to 10-hour day. That is the amount of water, or roughly the amount of water that a person should be intaking. The general rule for deciding on how much water that your body should take, because it isn't the same for everybody, is to take your weight and divide it by half to provide an estimated amount of ounces needed for an average day. And again, this is one of the large problems is we do not see workers or anybody for that matter, whether you're at home or otherwise, providing yourself with adequate levels of hydration throughout the day. So, and that is the toolbox talk that I'd like to provide for you today. Remembering again, with these hot days, the past couple of weeks, we've had some incredibly warm days, including the Humidex index or the Humidex, to make sure that you do take on adequate levels of hydration to help prevent and ward off the heat-related illnesses that do creep up on people quite quickly. Just one quick relatable story. There was one day while we were working in an area where we had not only the sun, but we also had a reflective surface that was pushing the sun back on us from both sides. And there was a point in time where we were working off of a little bit of a structure, and a coworker who I had known for many, many years could not remember my name. At that point in time, we decided it was time to stop, get into the shade and take a break. But however, that was already too late by that point, and we should have been taking more adequate breaks to begin with. So it does creep up on you, often unexpectedly, and you most certainly do not want it to lead to the more serious event of heat stroke. And that is all that I have for you today. Again, join us again on another Tuesday for another toolbox talk that you could share with your workforce, and look forward to seeing you again.